Hello there. Welcome to another video. This is a live video that I just decided to record to share with you some reading and rambling. I have this book right here. I'm not sure if you could see it. It doesn't seem like it's mirroring correctly, but this book is written in Russian, and you can see it is very, very old and yellowish. Take a look at some of the notes I made when I was a child, but this book, it's called «От колыбели до школы», and I was printed in 1980 in former Soviet Union, and it is about pregnancy and growing up until school age. So the first chapter is You're Expecting, and then it continues on with some tips and recommendations about fresh air, importance of fruits, vegetables, some charts like these, like that, just indicating what a daily routine of a 5-month-old child should be, and some other drawings like that. Basically, it's a guide on how to bring up a human. And this book was handed down to me by my mother. So I'm going to just read a couple of things in Russian, so you might not understand if you don't speak Russian. But hopefully this would be relaxing. Now let's pick a topic that might be interesting. There are a lot of graphs as well. Let's look at the picture. There's some exercises that might be useful for a baby. I know, it's quite interesting. So let's look at the 10th month of life. Физическое и нервно-психическое развитие, купание сидя, правильное сидение, гимнастические упражнения с предметами, новое впитание, дневное меню, активная еда, воспаление среднего уха, отит, согревающий компресс. These were more like keywords of what to expect from this chapter. На 10-м месяце ребенок прибавляет в весе около 500 грамм и вырастает примерно на 2 сантиметра. Таким образом, темпы роста и веса несколько снижаются, зато отмечается быстрое развитие физических умений и психики ребенка. Он уже понимает простую речь. При встрече с другими детьми общителен. Любит потрогать рукой новые предметы, показать их пальчиком. С удовольствием воспринимает заигрывание взрослых. Быстро учится совершать примитивные стереотипные движения, сделать вид, что прячется при проигре ку-ку, смеется и отстраняется при игре «Идет коза рогатая». Он понимает, что коза не причинит ему вреда, и воспринимает шутливое настроение взрослого. Этот возраст передельный звукоохотными звуками и словами. Этот возраст предельной звукоохотливости. I read the wrong line, but let's try this again. Иными словами, ребенок как бы играет отдельными звуками и словами. Иногда они имеют эмоциональную краску. Смысловое значение появляется только после длительного специального обучения, когда мягко, но настойчиво повторяются одни и те же слоги, применительно к определенным действиям и лицам. Без этого этапа развитие осмысленной речи задерживается. Во время игры ребенок уже способен остановиться на колени, нагибаться, придерживаясь одной рукой, переходить от предмета к предмету, если достает их рукой. And it describes basically some of the games that the child is playing at that age, and some of the things that they're supposed to do by this age of 10 months. Во время игры ребенок уже способен становиться на колени, нагибаться, придерживаясь одной рукой, переходить от предмета к предмету, если достает их рукой. Физическое и психическое развитие ребенка отчетливо проявляется в его отношении к купанию. После 3-4 месяцев он уже не сопротивляется при опускании его в ванночку. В 6-7 месяцев принимает активное участие в купании. Сам протягивает для мытья то ручку, то ножку. Любит барахтаться, плескаться в воде, громко смеется и лепечет. С 10-го месяца активность малыша столь велика, что даже мешает спокойно проводить купание. Ребенок стремится превратить купание в новую игру. Старается поймать рукой лицо или волосы наклонившейся матери. Хватается за губку плавающей игрушки, поднимает ручки на голову, когда губкой и махровой варежкой натирают ему тельце, и кричит, когда его пытаются вынуть из ванны. So here they're basically saying that by the time the baby turns 10 months old, they're actually enjoying some kind of baths. So by the time by 6, 7 months, they're actively participating in their bathing. So they will extend the hand, they will laugh and become more engaged during bathing. That's quite interesting. And then apparently, when if they like it so much, when you take them out, they will scream and cry. So I've never realized that. Okay, next one. Правила купания меняются с возрастом ребенка. Во втором полугодии малыша нужно купать через день. Но если позволяют условия, то желательно продолжать купание ежедневно. Ребенка купают сидя. So here they're saying that the rules of bathing change with the age of a child. Um, the after 6 months, you really need to bathe the child once every 2 days instead of every day. But if you can definitely do it daily, and you bathe the baby sitting down at that point. Намыливанию предшествует теплая ванна с водоплавляющими игрушками. Не хотят купаться, это правда бывает редко. Лишь дети, которых однажды погрузили в более горячую или холодную, чем обычно, воду. And then they're saying that typically children like bathing, but they won't want to bathe if they have some sort of memory of or experience, prior experience, where the temperature was not ideal when they had bath last time. So they have this memory. Тепловая память у малышей очень развита, поэтому они долго не могут забыть эту ситуацию и боятся воды. Иногда 10-месячный ребенок отказывается садиться в ванной. Причины этого явления неизвестны. И хотя это не педагогично, советуем некоторое время пойти по поводу у ребенка и мыть его стоящим под дождиком из лейки. Как и прежде, ванночка должна использоваться только для купания. Все купальные принадлежности должны содержаться в чистоте, периодически 1 раз в неделю кипятиться или обдаваться крутым кипятком. Поролоновые губки использовать не следует, так как их нельзя кипятить. And here they're showing the correct bathing position or pose of a child on a chair. При купании сидящего ребенка сначала протираться губкой или махровой варежкой лицо без мыла. Затем с помощью детского мыла моется головка. Чтобы мыло не попадало в глаза, нужно смывать его, наклонив головку ребенка назад. Потом намыленной губкой или варежкой моются конечности и туловище. В заключение ребенок откатывается чистой водой из кувшина. Последнее очень нравится детям. Окатывание хорошо еще и тем, что отвлекает ребенка, позволяет ему без сожаления расстаться с уютным теплом ванны. Well, I can tell you, I learned so much about bathing children. I never realized just how much is involved in the pure bathing of a baby. So this book also goes into details about what to feed the baby. So let's look at a typical recommendation. So there's a menu, sample menu for children. Um, let's see, from 1 year to a year and a half. No, remember, this book was printed in former USSR, so we're looking at it's 41 years old. Yeah, 41. So it was printed in 1980. So for Monday, for breakfast, they recommend uh, buckwheat. Do you guys know what buckwheat is? That was a staple in my diet when I was growing up. So it's a specific grain, I guess, that is high in protein, very similar to um, in nutritional value to quinoa, but buckwheat is much cheaper, and it is very delicious. You can eat it with some meat if you like to eat meat, or some vegetables, or you can make it sweet if you add a little bit of milk or oat milk and just uh, boil it with some sugar, and it makes it really nice and savory breakfast. All right, then they're recommending milk and cookies. Okay, interesting. So for breakfast, it's cookies, milk, and buckwheat. Then for lunch, they're recommending soup with some meat, and then liver, ground liver. So, just for those who are from the United States watching this, liver is actually a staple of former USSR diet as well. So, it's very typical to eat like chicken hearts or chicken liver. It's very inexpensive, and so because of that, very accessible, especially if you don't have enough money. Um, it's also nutritious. Although I have to say, I can't imagine now eating hearts or liver at this point. I guess when I was growing up, I really didn't have a clue of what all that was. It's amazing. And then, so let's go back to the book. Then there is картофельное puree, which is potato mashed potatoes, apple, and here they're saying it's like applesauce, but uh, ins- instead of adding sugar to applesauce, they just want pure apples that are ground up, and then black bread. So one thing that is very typical that is for Russian or former USSR countries diet is rye bread or black bread, and it is pretty nutritious. It looks very black and dark, and a lot of the time they add some seeds and some other things into it, or it can be just rye bread. So it's very hard to find it here unless it's baked in a Russian store or something like that. Next one, and this one is a snack. So for snack, they want the child to have kefir. So for those who don't know what kefir is, it's kind of like a soury type of drink, something between a sour cream and yogurt. And it's also a staple of our Russian diet. It has lots of different probiotics, and a lot of people here also love it as well. And then there's it's called sukharik. It's kind of like a bread that's somewhat of a stale bread, I don't know what's the alternative, I guess, here in the States. So, but let's go with stale bread, which is like you sounds terrible, right, for a child. And then some fruits. And then for dinner, there is vegetable puree. And they don't really specify here what kind of vegetables. Milk and a white bread with butter. And they even indicate here the actual weights. I don't know if you can see it. So that was Monday. So it's interesting. Let me look through and see if there are other specific items that are specific to former USSR diet that I might want to share with you. Okay. Spaghetti, no, no. Borscht. I'm sure you've heard of borscht. So borscht is a type of soup that's made with cabbage, and it is also delicious, absolutely amazing. Um, and here they're recommending it to be made with meat, and then something. It's a drink. It's called kisel. So kisel, it's a hot drink that is made with, I think they make it with agar agar, which is like the thickener. It's, I don't think it's made with gelatin because gelatin is quite rare as far as I remember. But basically, it's like thick glue consistency, a drink that is based on fruit juice. I know it kind of sounds pretty terrible when I describe it, but it's pretty delicious. And it's also interesting that each of the day has, well, now remember, this is the recommended menu for babies from 1 to 1.5 years old by day, right? And this is 1980. So each of the day has a cookie. I have not heard that a cookie is a recommendation in for children, especially in American diet. Well, I can tell you that I would not recommend it for him because of developing teeth at that point either. All right, let's see what else. Hmm. There are some, let's see, tea with milk. You know, I have to say that growing up in Eastern Europe, I have never tried tea with milk. And I probably missed out on quite a bit, but tea is typically, we would drink it with lemon, sugar, honey, but very rarely with milk. So it's kind of interesting how it is in different cultures. One thing I've been really recently watching some Asian channels. There's a lady from Tokyo who I follow on YouTube, and she shares with her audience different recipes. And I can tell you, one thing that was shocking to me is she would have a piece of bread, white bread, for breakfast, and she would toast it and then put some mayo on top with some cheese. And I've never seen anything like that. Mayo on a piece of bread for breakfast. I don't know. Is that kind of a. Do we have this in America as well? Or is it specific to Asian countries? I don't know. Let's take a look. What else? All right. So one other staple diet item is peas. We like our peas. So it's cooked or maybe boiled. So peas is a big deal for us. Um, Let's see. Oh, Melissa says that yes. Okay. So I guess that's referring to my question about the bread and mayo. Okay. Well, that answers that question. Okay. One other thing that is very specific is what's called farmer's cheese. We call it tvarog. And I think one of my videos where I showed you when I was making donuts, little tiny donuts like these, um, I used tvarog. And here they're recommending tvarog with sugar and sour cream. Very typical breakfast as well. It's pretty healthy. It's hard to find it here in the States again unless you go to a Russian food store. It's interesting is, and what's interesting is the the diet here includes some fish, but because fish was not as accessible or available to really anybody in the former USSR, it's not really a staple in the diet. Fish is relatively, well, I guess it's hard to say that it's former USSR in general, but the area where I grew up, it was not very common to eat fish just because, again, it was very expensive. It is still the case. Very rarely do you eat fish, so that's interesting. So one other thing that you might find interesting is apples. So not just it's apples are interesting, but what we would do, we would bake apples. We would cover it in the regular apple and sugar and just a little bit on top, not too much, and then place it on a baking sheet and bake in the oven. When it comes out, it is nice, soft, and mushy, but the outer skin is crisp and sugar has melted, so it creates this nice and delicious crust. And inside is completely, it's almost like a gel-like consistency. It was a lot of fun making and eating that. So let's see. So that was the typical diet for a baby. Let's see. They do have other recommendations as the child grows up. They add egg, they add some additional meat. Yeah, and vegetables. Vegetables is a staple of our diet as well. So, really, I grew up eating so many vegetables that I never really developed um, the idea that vegetables is not part of our diet or you had to eat vegetables. I really enjoyed them. We would eat a raw cucumber or a raw tomato. It would be very common for me to go in the garden and grab a stalk of celery or maybe some green leaves and just wash it and eat it as is. So it's kind of interesting how different cultures change differ, and they have their own traditions, own foods. So I hope you enjoyed this little reading in the beginning of the video, and then later just some rambling of this video. I wish you a great week, and please take care of yourself again. Be kind to one another. Goodbye.